Welcome back to class. This lecture is going over the leveling assignment. You can see that here from Canvas. So there's a file that you need to download, and then there's instructions for the assignment. It's going to assume that we have done your takeoff for the exteriors of the building. So we need to make sure we're doing that. We're going to need that information from that exteriors takeoff to be able to fill out the leveling sheet. Now, before we go too far, let me put this assignment in context. For this assignment, we need to set the ground or set the table, kind of like lay out where it is in time that we are for during the generic pre-construction or estimating process. So we're going to go backwards, and then what we want to end up on is bid leveling and put that in context. But what we're going to try and go backwards for a second. So the client is requesting a proposal from a general contractor. This client's the owner, the architect, whatever you want to call the person that's asking the general contractor to the developer, whatever. So the client has some design, and we're saying that the design is mostly complete about the time that they're going to go get a permit. So they're trying to go to the city for a permit, and they're also trying to find a general contractor to build it. So there's lots of different ways that could happen, that the client's going to reach out at different times or different phases at which the design is done. But for this scenario, I'm just going to talk about it from that general perspective. The design's mostly done. The client's going to get the permit from the city or the jurisdiction, and they've requested the general contractor to put together a proposal for their project. So we, as the general contractor, in order for us to be able to put that price together and put that proposal together, we need to send out requests to bids to the subcontractors. So we're going to take that design documents that we've received from the client, send those out to the various subcontractors that we work with, and requesting them to bid on the job. And so that has to be organized. I'm simplifying it here, but that has to be organized, and you need to make sure the intent is that you've got, let's use the word coverage or full scopes, that you're not having any scope gaps, that you've got costs and reliable subcontractors and trade partners, that you have a complete project bought out or bid, excuse me. So what we need to do after we've requested those bids is we're going to prepare our project from the general conditions point of view, and we'll talk about that in more detail later. So the general conditions costs, the general contractor costs, whatever you want to call that, and we'll deal with that. But then as we prepare that, we're putting together the schedule, we're putting together the logistics plans, we're putting together other things associated with the project from a general contractor's perspective. At the same time, we're also, most likely, our estimating department is doing takeoffs and getting really familiar with the drawings. So the takeoffs that we're doing, we've done that in class. And for our exteriors assignment, you've done the exteriors takeoff from a general contractor's perspective. We didn't do a super detailed takeoff where we got every little line item as if like you were a subcontractor trying to bid it out. So we did it from a GC perspective, so we could have like a general idea of the total quantity of the exteriors, so that when we get subcontractor bids back, we have a full understanding of what's in the exterior, so that we have quantities figured out, so we can then compare the various scopes and make sure that as we select the correct subcontractor for this project that we want to use, that we need our information, right? So we have our takeoff that we're then going to compare with the subcontractor bids. And during that same time, while we do takeoffs, I encouraged you to also make detailed notes of what the scope was. And so that's where we are right now. We're getting subcontractor bids back. You've done your takeoff of the exterior, and now we're trying to compare those bids. So that's called bid leveling. And so the bid leveling, we're just trying to, one, we're going to compare price and evaluate that price against one another, but is it a true price comparison? If you just look at the overall number associated with the subcontracts bid, the subcontractor's bid, it may or may not be that they bid the exact same thing. So we want to be able to line up their proposals side by side, and so we're going to use this bid leveling uh, Excel template in this for this assignment. And I know that multiple general contractors use different tools, and there's there's bid leveling templates for um, in different programs. And so I'm not suggesting that there's anything that's exactly right or perfect. I'm just saying that this Excel spreadsheet is sort of what would be done, representative of what the industry sort of has. Obviously, it can get way more simple or it can get way more complicated, but we're just going to use sort of the middle of the road Excel file for it. So the idea here is that as we fill out the scope on the left hand side, we not only have the big picture, big ticket items like the stucco or the cement board or um, the thin brick, but we also have the granularity in there of the individual components that we want to see, that make sure that we have all those things too in the bids. And sometimes it's easy to tell that the subcontractors included them, and sometimes it's not. So we'll go through that in more detail. But the idea here is that, again, we need to be able to compare the subcontractor bids to make sure that it's a true price comparison, that we're looking for scope gaps or missing items or anything that seems anomalous. So like one of the reasons to be able to uh, put in what we think the square footage is to compare that against their square footage. Is that correct? You could also see pretty big discrepancies in dollar values associated with various line items. And so if you see big swings in numbers, maybe there's a problem there too. So it needs to be analyzed a little bit more. So we want to have a complete scope in order to give that a client the bid that shows, okay, we, the general contractor, can build this entire project for this. And so when we're working on exteriors, we want to make sure we have a complete bid. A big part of making sure that you have a complete bid is making sure that you know what's in the plans. Make sure that you have done your job as an estimator to make sure that you know the quantities, and one of the basic ideas is you then move your quantities and your granularity items over into the Excel spreadsheet. So right here I've got an area for fiber cement at 2,300 square feet. That line item for fiber cement, I'm putting in for my quantity, it's 2,363.86 square feet. And we're going to do the same thing with all the main line items. So whether it be windows, and there's some other ones in there like logistics that you're not going to have a takeoff on, but you'll need them anyways. But the TPO, the windows, the stucco, the fiber cement, all those items you need to be able to put your quantities in the Excel spreadsheet from your takeoff from Bluebeam. And so I have those listed in the leveling sheet. What's specifically the main items that I want you to bring over: brick, stucco, fiber cement, windows, roofing membrane, sheet vinyl, deck coating. That's the main line items that are in bold within the leveling template that you need to add, and then add the quantities, the granularity that you're going to put in underneath those, whether it be sheet vinyl or some other detail. The ones that aren't bold, that's the granularity that I want you to bring in. So that's that line item I'm talking about. Add granularity to your leveling template. Your goal is to make sure you have an entire scope. So you need to look at the entire drawings for the exterior and put additional line items underneath each of those things, like the Tyvek or the building wrap or paint. How about paint? How about gutters, downspouts, fascia? All those things that we were looking at as we went through the drawings that you should have become familiar with as you're doing your takeoff. We didn't do a specific takeoff to try and do like guardrail right here. We never took them off, and we never did the metal cap takeoff or quantity. But those are elements within the scope, like the gutter right there. Those are elements as part of the scope that we need to have. There's fascia right here, gutter, more gutter, soffit right there, more fascia, soffit. So we didn't do a detailed takeoff to try and get all that quantity. But as you're doing your main takeoff, you needed to have noted that, hey, those are line items that I'm expecting to see from the subcontractor in their bid. So that's the granularity that I want you to add inside the leveling template. You also needed to make a list of questions to follow up with on the architect while you were doing your takeoff. Things just didn't quite make sense. And you can see that here, like the patio gutter, it's missing a downspout. So those are the questions, and I would recommend writing them as RFIs. So I have like the pop out on the right hand side elevation. It's my question of mine, like what is that? So I'll show you real quick what I was looking at. So this area on the right hand side, that area right there, it sure seems like it should pop out. Why is the stucco different? Why did it go from like no reveal to a reveal right there? My guess is that they were intending it to pop out. It's either incorrect or it was a graphical error or something. There's lots of like you can't see that pop out on any of the floor plans. And so maybe it was supposed to be there, maybe it wasn't supposed to be there. But as you can look right there, like it's really difficult to tell that if it's I just don't know what it is. So it's a good question. So that's why I wrote it as an RFI right there. So that was one of my line items. I'm going to ask about this. You could ask about this little graphic right there. What is that thing right there? Who knows? But there's all kinds of little nuances, things in these drawings. You can say like, oh, I don't know about this. I don't know about that. And those are line items that I want you to put in your leveling template as your list of questions. The next thing, uh, you need to identify the scope as included or excluded. And so let me show you how to get that. So you need to go download the files for the two uh, exterior bids that I have for you. And so go to the files port of Canvas and you download exteriors 1 and exteriors 2 and the deck coatings and the roof. So those three files right there, 1, 2, and 3. And so your job is to review what they have noted. Right there, they have the square footage, they have their granularity right below it, and then the dollar value right there. And so you're literally just inputting in their granularity, making sure that it makes sense. There's the dollar value. There's our exterior one sub. So there's the dollar value right there. We're taking the 431,900. And then you've got the rest of the granularity that they have, and you compare your granularity to their granularity. And then literally, if it says that they have it, like the Tyvek was something they specifically said they had. Oh, that one's my RFI, so that one's, I don't know that anybody would have that. But the precast wall cap, it was an assumption on exteriors number 2. And we'll talk about that in more detail in a little bit. But I plugged in their number from exteriors number 2 for precast wall cap. It was one of the line items I felt needed to be there for thin brick. And the sub 1 doesn't have that listed at all. So they don't have that precast wall cap. And that's the idea there, is that you're trying to see if they're included or excluded, like the hardy trimmer around the windows. If you looked at both of the bids, it's going to have that there it is right there, the 5/4 trim. And maybe you're not super familiar with what 5/4 trim is, but in general, you could ask questions or you could text me or whatever and say, what does this mean in their bid? but that means that they have the trim around the windows, so it's included. So I'm noting that the hardy board around the windows, doors and windows, it's included, and that was included in the exterior 2 scope as well. So you'd have to get both of those sheets from the files, and you need to analyze them and go figure out. And they look different, because that's exactly what I want you to get familiar with, is the different subcontractors. Their formats look different, so you have to get used to both of them and try and read both the sheets, and then put in that value of is it included, excluded, put in the dollar value if they have that. So try and fill out that leveling sheet as best you can, and we'll hit you up in the next lecture, okay?